Let's look at week 5, simplifying expressions. Hopefully you've already looked at the simplifying expressions notes that I provided you. And now we can go through the video notes together. So remember that like terms are terms that have the same variable and the same raised to the same power, meaning the same exponent. Or they could be constants, meaning they're terms that do not have a variable. Let's go through this and I think it'll make it clearer. So number 1 says 3n plus n. Well, the terms here, there are two. The terms are 3n and n. Coefficients. Remember that coefficients are the number that comes before a variable. So in a term that has a variable, like these two, 3n and n, it's the number that comes before the variable. So the coefficient of 3n is 3. The coefficient of n, remember that n is the same as 1n, so the coefficient of n is 1. Most of the time you will not see that 1 in front of the variable, but you need to know that it is there. Constants. Constants are terms without a variable. And in this case, we do not have any. 3n has a variable and n has a variable, so there are no constants. Number 2, 5x plus 5. The terms are 5x and 5. The coefficients, remember that coefficient is the number that comes before a variable. So if the term does not have a variable, it doesn't have a coefficient. This term, 5x, has a variable, so the coefficient is 5. This term, 5, does not have a variable, so it does not have a coefficient. Constants, remember, are numbers that do not have variables, so numerical terms without a variable, such as 5. So the constant here is 5. Let's look at number 3. When we get to these with more than one term or more than two terms, and they also have subtraction signs or negatives in them, then I find the easiest way to do it is to box in my terms. So we're going to put a box around the 6y. We're going to put a box around the plus 7 and a box around the minus 4y. So that makes this a positive 6y. That makes this a positive 7. And that makes this term a negative 4y. I know that that's a subtraction, but if you remember your rules about integers, you know that if I have a subtraction, I add the opposite, which would make this a negative 4y. The second thing I'm going to do once I get them boxed is put my like terms together. So here I'm going to put 6y, negative 4y, and then positive 7. So now I have all of my like terms grouped together, and it's going to make it a little easier for me to answer the question. So my terms are 6y, we'll look up here, 6y, positive 7, remember when it's positive you don't need the plus in front of it, and negative 4y. We do need the negative to show that it is negative. The coefficients then, there are only two of these terms that have a coefficient. Those are the ones that have variables. So the coefficient of 6y is 6, and the coefficient of negative 4y is negative 4. The constant here is the term that does not have a variable, and that is 7. So the constant is 7. Let's look at number 4. Number 4, we're going to box in the terms again. So I have negative 5h, negative 8, positive 2h, and negative 2. I would highly suggest that you box these terms in until you get used to doing this, and I will require you to box them in when we're actually doing them together in class for our review. Then we'll put our like terms together, so negative 5h, and then we have plus 2h, then we have minus 8, minus 2. So my terms, I can look right up here. Negative 5h, positive 8, oh I'm sorry, negative 8, positive 2h, and negative 2. My coefficients are with the terms with variables, so I have a negative 5 and a positive 2. And my constants are the terms without variables, so I have negative 8 and negative 2. Okay, now that we've learned the definitions for terms, coefficients, and constants, and we know how to um, box them and group like terms together, let's go down and actually simplify some. So number 5 says 3n plus n. Well, we know that this is the same as 3n plus 1n. So when I add or simplify expressions, what I do is I add the coefficients. So 3 plus 1 is 4, and my variable stays the same. So my answer would be 4n. In other words, if I had 3 apples and 1 apple, if I add them together, I have 4 apples. Number 6, 5x plus 5. Well, this does not have a variable, and this does, so I cannot add them together. They are not like terms. So your answer would be simplified. If it has no like terms, you cannot add them together. Number 7. Remember up in number 3, we had this exact same problem, and we grouped our like terms together. So we put boxes around, positive 6y, positive 7, negative 4y. Then we grouped our like terms together. And once we get our like terms grouped together, then we can combine them. Remember, we can only combine them if they are alike. So these have the same variable, meaning they're alike. So I'm going to subtract my 2 coefficients. 6 minus 4 is 2. The y stays the same. And then plus 7. And remember, I cannot add 7 to 2y because 2y and 7 are not like terms. They don't both have a variable, or they are not both constants. Number 8. This is just like number 4. And we boxed in our terms. And then we wrote them like terms grouped together. So 5h plus 2, negative 5h plus 2h minus 8 minus 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is take these two and group them together. So I have a negative 5 and a positive 2. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. The h stays the same. Then I'm going to cover them up, and I see I have negative 8 minus 2. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. I can't combine those two because they are not alike, so they're going to remain the same. Negative 3h minus 10 is your answer. Let's look at number 9. On number 9, we want to group or box in our terms first. So we'll box all of our terms. And once we've boxed our terms, then we need to group our like terms. I generally do the variables first because when you get to algebra, there are some things that are going to be, it will be helpful for you to be able to make sure that you get your variable terms first. So I just go ahead and start that with you in pre-al. So 2w, positive 2w, remember you don't need the plus, minus w, and those are the only terms with a variable, so then I'll just go right over here and I'll put minus 2 minus 6 plus 9. And now I've got all of my terms grouped with like terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is take 2w minus w. Remember that this has a 1 in front of it even though we can't see it. So 2 minus 1 is 1, 1w, or I could write it just w. Then I'm going to cover these up, and I've got negative 2 minus 6. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 9 is positive 1, so I write it plus 1. 1w plus 1, or you could write it w plus 1, either way. Number 10, let's go ahead and box our terms. Once we've got our terms boxed, let's go ahead and write like terms together. So we have 3x minus 3x, and then we have negative 4 plus 4. So negative 3x minus 3x is 0. We'll cover them up. Negative 4 plus 4, remember we talked about in integer operations that when you add a number and its opposite, you get 0. So the answer to this one, or the simplified answer, is 0. Take some time to look over the notes again and review through the video notes. and then go ahead and work on the homework. Remember that if you have questions, you can email me. This is a very important section. This is something that you do need to understand. So if you need to get on my website and look up some of the useful links with Cool Math or Khan Academy or any of those things to help you with some additional problems, please feel free to do that.